Untrodden Peaks and Unfrequented Valleys, Section 15. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Untrodden Peaks and Unfrequented Valleys, A Midsummer Ramble Through the Dolomites, by Amelia B. Edwards. Chapter 6. Auronzo and Val Buona, Part 2. Now, some little distance farther on, we passed the desolate hamlet of Travelogue, a cluster of half-ruined cottages at the mouth of a wild glen, leading to a perilous and rarely trodden pass behind the Col and Yellow. And now the road plunges all at once into a dense, fragrant tract of pine forest, musical with the singing of birds, pierced here and there by shafts of quivering sunlight, and all alive with little brown squirrels darting to and fro among the pendant fir cones. By and by a great cloven peak comes up above the tree tops to the left, shutting out half the sunshine, and then a broad glade opens suddenly in the wood, revealing what looks at first like a range of new and colossal mountains, the lower spurs of which are only separated from us by the bed of the Anziei. At this point the driver pulls up, and half turning round upon his box, says with all the exaggerated politeness of a master of the ceremonies in a provincial assembly room, "Con rispetto, Signora, il Marmarole." Being thus formally introduced to our new Dolomite, we would fain achieve a better view of it than is possible from this point. All we see of it indeed is a vast mass towering up indefinitely beyond the pine forest, and facing us a huge slope of reddish-brown earth piled up to a height of some 500 or 700 feet against the mountain. This slope of rubble, dotted over here and there with wooden sheds, marks the site of an extensive lead and silver mine, now abandoned, and a tiny hole in the face of the cliff above, no bigger apparently than a keyhole, is pointed out as the entrance to the principal shaft. So we go on, always in the green shade of the forest, till we come to a little group of cottages known collectively as the Casa di San Marco, a name recalling the old days of Venetian sovereignty, and still marking the frontier between Italy and Austria. Here, there being no officials anywhere about, we passed unquestioned under the black and yellow pole, and so arrive in a few moments at the opening point of the new government road, which old Ghedina had given us directions to follow as far as it went. This new government road, carried boldly up and through a steep hillside of pine forest, is considered, and no doubt with justice, to be an excellent piece of work, but old Holborn Hill, with all the paving stones up, would have been as easy driving compared with it. As yet, indeed, it is not a bad road, but a rough clearing some 20 feet in width, full of stones and rubble and slags of knotted root, with the lately felled pine trunks lying prostrate at each side, like the ranks of slain upon a battlefield. No vehicle, it seems, has yet been brought this way, and though we all alight instantly, it seems doubtful whether the carriage can ever be got up. The horses, half maddened by clouds of gadflies, struggle up the rugged slope, stopping every now and then to plunge and kick furiously. The landau rocks and rolls like a ship at sea. Every moment the road becomes worse, and the blaze of noonday heat more intolerable. Presently we come upon a gang of road makers some 200 in number, women and children as well as men, swarming over the banks like ants, clearing, levelling, and stone breaking. They pause in their work, and stare at us as if we were creatures from another world. "You are the first travellers who have come up this way," says the overseer as we pass by. "You must be Inglesi." At length we reach a point where the road ceases altogether, its future course being marked off with stakes across a broad plateau of smooth turf. This plateau, a kind of natural arena in the midst of an upper world of pine forest, is hemmed in closely by trees on 3 sides, but sinks away on the left to a wooded dell down which a clear stream leaps and sparkles. We look around, seeing no outlet save by the way we have come, and wondering what next can be done with the carriage. To our amazement, the driver coolly takes the leader by the head, and makes straight for the steep pitch dipping down to the torrent. "You will not attempt to take the carriage down into that hole?" exclaims the rider. "Con rispetta, Signora, there is no other way," replies the driver, deferentially. "But the horses will break their legs, and the carriage will be dashed to pieces." "Come le piace, Signora," says the driver, dimly recognising the truth of this statement. We are standing now on the brink of the hollow, the broken bank shelving down to a depth of about 30 feet, the torrent tumbling and splashing at the bottom, and the opposite bank rising almost as abruptly beyond. "Are we bound to get it across here?" I ask. "Con rispetta, yes, Signora. That is to say, it can be sent back to the Cortina all the way round by Auronzo and the Pieve di Cadore. It is as the Signora pleases." Now it pleases neither of the Signoras to send the carriage back by a round of something like 45 miles, so, after a hurried consultation, we decide to have the horses taken out, and the carriage hauled across by men. Giuseppe is thereupon dispatched for a reinforcement of navvies, and thus, by the help of some 3 or 4 stalwart fellows, the landau is lifted bodily over, the horses are led across and reharnessed, and after a little more pushing and pulling, a rough cart track on the other side of this Rubicon is gained in safety. Yet a few yards farther, and we emerge upon another space of grassy Alp. A green, smooth, sloping amphitheatre of perhaps some 80 acres in extent. To the east all woods, to the west all mountains, with one lonely little white house nestling against the verge of the forest a quarter of a mile away. This amphitheatre is the Val Buona; that little white house is the cottage of Bastian the wood ranger. Yonder pale gigantic pinnacles towering in solitary splendour above the tree tops to the rear of the cottage are the crests of the Cristallo. But above all else, it is the view to the westward that we have come here to see, the famous Cirque of the Croda Malcora. And in truth, although we have already beheld much that is wild and wonderful in the world of Dolomite, we have as yet seen nothing that may compare with this. The green sward slopes away from before our feet and vanishes in a chasm of wooded valley of unknown depth and distance, while beyond and above this valley, reaching far away out of sight to right and left, piled up precipice above precipice, peak above peak, seamed with horizontal bars of snowdrift, upholding here a fold of glittering glacier, dropping there a thread of misty waterfall, cutting the skyline with all unimaginable forms of jagged ridge and battlement, and reaching, as it seems, midway from earth to heaven, runs a vast, unbroken chain of giant mountains. But what mountains? Familiar as we have become by this time with the Ampezzo Dolomites, there is not here one outline that either can recognise. Where, then, are we? And what should we see if we could climb yonder mighty barrier? It takes some minutes' consideration and the help of the map to solve these questions. Then suddenly all becomes clear. We are behind the Croda Malcora, directly behind Sorapis, and looking straight across in the direction of the Pelmo, which, however, is hidden by intervening mountains. The Antelao should be visible to the left, but is blocked out by the long and lofty range of the Marmarole. Somewhere away to the right, in the gap that separates this great panorama from the nearer masses of the Cristallo, lies the Tre Croce pass leading to Cortina. The main feature of the view, however, is the Croda Malcora, and we are looking at it from the back. Seen on this side, it shows as sheer a wall of impending precipice, too steep and straight to afford any resting places for the snow, save here and there upon a narrow ledge or shelf, scarce wide enough for a chamois. On the Ampezzo side, however, it flings out huge piers of rock, so that the westward and eastward faces of it are as unlike as though they belonged to 2 separate mountains. This form, as I by and by discover, is of frequent occurrence in Dolomite structure, the Civita affording perhaps the most remarkable case in point. Having looked a while at this wonderful view, we are glad once more to escape out of the blinding sunshine into the shade of the pine woods. Here, by the help of rugs and cloaks, we make a tent in which to rest for a couple of hours during the great heat of the day, and so, taking luncheon, studying our books and maps, listening to the bees among the wild flowers and to the thrushes in the rustling boughs overhead, we fancy ourselves in Arcadia or the forest of Arden. Meanwhile the woodman's is busy among the fir trees on the hillside, and now and then we hear the crash of a falling tree. The forester who lives in the white cottage yonder comes by and by to pay his respects to the Signore. His name is Bastian, and he turns out to be a brother of Santo Sorpas. He also has been a soldier, and is glad now and then when opportunity offers to act as a guide. He lives in this lost corner of the world the whole year round. It is molto tristo, he says, especially in winter. When autumn wanes, he provisions his little house as if for a long siege, laying in a store of flour, cheese, sausage, coffee, and the like. Then the snow comes, and for months no living soul ventures up from the valleys. All is white and silent, like death. The snow is as high as himself, sometimes higher, and he has to dig a trench about the house, that the light may not be blocked out of the lower windows. There was one winter, he says, not many years ago, when the falls were so sudden and so heavy that he never went to bed at night without wondering whether he should be buried alive in his cottage before morning. While he is yet speaking, a band of road-makers comes trooping by, whistling, laughing, and humming scraps of songs. They are going back to work, having just eaten their midday mess of polenta, and their hearts are glad with wine, the rough red wine that Bastian sells at the cottage for about 3 kreuzers the litro, and which we at luncheon found quite undrinkable. "The place is full of life now, at all events," says L. consolingly. He looks after them and shakes his head. "Yes, Signora," he replies, "but their work here will soon be done, and then it will seem more solitary than ever." The man is very like Santo, but has nothing of Santo's animation. The lonely life seems to have taken all that brightness out of him. His manner is sad and subdued, and when he is not speaking he has just that sort of lost look that one sees in the faces of prisoners who have been a long time in confinement. At 2 o'clock we break up our camp and prepare to start again. The polite driver, mindful of a possible buono mano, comes to take leave, and is succeeded by the lad Giovanni, who has journeyed up from Cortina to meet with us the promised saddle horses. And now our old friend the tall chestnut appears upon the scene with the Pezze side saddle on his back, followed by an equally big black horse with the Ghedina saddle, whereupon, having Giuseppe and Giovanni in attendance, we mount and ride away, not without certain shrewd suspicions that our gallant steeds are carrying ladies for the first time. Big as they are, they climb, however, like cats, clambering in a wonderful way up the steep and stony slope of fir forest that rises behind Bastian's cottage and leads to the Misurina Alp beyond. 3/4 of an hour of this rough work brings us to a higher level than we have yet reached, and lands us on an immense plateau of rich turf, hemmed in on both sides by an avenue of rocky summits. Those to the right are the Cime Cadino, or Cadine Spitzen. Those on the left are the lower crags of the Cristallo mass, above which, though unseen from here, towers the gigantic Piz Popena. And this vast prairie valley, so high, so solitary, all greenest grass below, all bluest sky above, undulating away into measureless distance, is the Misurina Alp. As much perhaps as 1,000 head of cattle are here feeding in the rich pastures. Presently we pass the Stabilimento, or Vacherie as it would be called in France, a cluster of substantial wooden buildings where the herdsmen live in summer, making and storing the cheeses, which form so important an item in the wealth of the district. At length, when we have journeyed on and on for what seems like an interminable distance, we come upon a circular hollow in the midst of which nestles the Misurina lake, a green, transparent, tranquil tarn, fed as we are told by 30 springs, and rich in salmon trout and otters. The place is inconceivably still, beautiful, and solitary. Dark rushes fringe the borders of the lake, and are doubled by reflection. 3 cows stand drowsing in the water, motionless. Not a ripple disturbs its glossy surface. Not a sound stirs the air. Yonder, where the vista opens northwards, appear the cloudy summits of the Drei Zinnen. Here, where the glassy lawn slopes down to the water's edge, The very sunshine seems asleep. The whole scene has a breathless unreality about it, as if it were a mirage or a picture. Having rested here a while, we retrace our steps the whole length of the plateau, and then, dismounting, strike across on foot over a long slope of bog and rock, till we gain the mule track leading by the Tre Croce Pass to Cortina. An easy ascent winding up and round the edge of a pine forest now carries us over the shoulder of the Cristallo, which here assumes quite a new aspect, and instead of appearing as one united mass, divides into 3 enormous blocks, each block in itself a mountain. For a long way the eastward view still commands the range of the Marmarole and the Circa Malcora. Then by degrees, as we work round towards the west, the Marmarole is gradually lost to sight, and the Malcora crags begin to show themselves in profile. At last the summit of the pass is gained, with its 3 crosses, and all the familiar peaks of the Ampezzo side rise once more in magnificent array against the sunset. To the left, the Pelmo and Rochetta; to the right, a corner of Monte Lagazuoi and the 3 summits of the Tofana; straight ahead the Bec di Mezzodi, Monte Nuvolau, and beyond the gap of the Tre Sassi Pass, the far-off snow slope of the Marmolata. The road from there to Cortina, though not steep, is long and rough, so rough that we are glad to dismount presently and finish the homeward journey on foot. As we go down, a number of wayside crosses, some crudely fashioned in wood, some of rusty iron, attract our attention by their frequency on either side of the path. They are monuments to the memory of travellers lost in the sudden snowstorms that make these passes so perilous in winter time and spring. End of Section 15.